Hi, how you doing?
Good. A little bit nervous.
A little bit interesting. Appreciate you coming on. Should be a fun conversation today.
Yeah.
So I like to kind of just start off with a big one. I've been asking everybody this, but we're both mystery school guides, and really committed to what we do. And there's always a bigger purpose and mission that drives us to keep doing what we're doing, right? I guess let's just start off. And what is your mission?
I'm here. So there are many layers to the mission. What's coming up right now is something that I said in a Know Thyself class when I took it the first time in 2019, and it really stuck with me. Is that I want to help build a world where every child is born and raised in happy, healthy family, and that has a lot of layers, right? Yeah, taking care of a child, but really start with the parents. So that means helping the parents, helping people becoming better, you could say father, mother. But again, like before you become a better father, mother, you got to become a better person. And so for me right now, the work has been a lot focused on helping the individuals become the better selves. And I just happen to have a lot of mothers and some fathers coming to me in this case. So it's kind of like there's the longer plan and then I'm taking steps on it.
Yeah. I mean, so overall empowerment, right? Empowering parents to do, be their best so they can whoever they're raising, right? And it just makes it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of parents, especially mothers I've talked to, right? Like you kind of get stuck in that it's not a trap, but that kind of like you kind of get stuck in how, oh, I have something that I'm responsible for, and so I gotta put that thing first. But then they have yet to learn how to put themselves first as well, and so they get into that cycle. And at some point, sometimes it gets too much. Then they have to really take a step back and be serious that okay, I have to give to myself so that I could give to my kids more.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing to highlight, right? It's kind of like a mother's guilt because they love their kid so much, and they think, oh, if I pour so much into my kid, and then they have to fill their cup as well too, right? And it's hard to. I mean, I have my daughter, and I've talked to plenty of mothers, and it's a very common thing, right? Because it's sort of backwards. It's like, hey, the more you pour into yourself, the more you progress, the more that's going to help your kid, right? So putting yourself first is also putting your kid first, you know, and
Yeah,
that's
and that's what I mean I haven't been talking a lot about that, but that's just like what a lot of people that have been coming to me just already understood. Because it's kind of like if you've had kids for 18, a lot of my clients have older kids. If you've had kids like for 20 years, then at some point you really learn, okay, I have to put myself first.
yeah. So it's all how do you put yourself first, right? Because if you're stuck, you need different tools to you need different tools and teachings to get you to that next level, right?
Mm. Yeah, and I didn't know that you had a daughter as well. Is that what you
Oh
said?
yeah, yeah, of
Oh
course.
wow.
Yeah. So what inspired you? We all start out somewhere. What inspired you to take on a spiritual path? What were the first things you were working on? Because I thought we start with one thing, and then as it develops and like you said, our mission, our purpose grows, and then we get to the next level, right?
Yeah, so I was always on, you could say, on a search, like kind of really my whole life. Ever since I was little, I've known that I was here for a reason to help people. I've known that, but also, so you had that knowing, but my outer life was really, it's kind of like I had a, it was rough growing up, witness a lot of, like disharmonies in life, watching other people. And so it was really tough to just grow up because, you had this idealistic view of, oh my gosh, the world is a gift, everything is awesome. But then outside, that's just not so. So it was tough growing up, and I did go through traumas and like traumatic incidences. And because of that, I at some point I knew, okay, if I want to help people, I have to help myself. So I remember I turned 20. Like I just one time I was just lying in bed after I turned 20, and I was like, okay, this is it. I can no longer wallow in my self pity.
Yeah.
I have to do something, better with my life. I no longer can blame my parents. I just no more blaming anybody. I have to take that responsibility. And it took me a few years. Like I was really deep into self help, productivity, because that was kind of like, if you want to be a better person, that was kind of like your only choice, right? If you didn't know that spirituality exists. Um, and then so that was kind of like the whole lifelong Gusei journey. What truly kind of propelled me towards a mission school, like that previous thing that happened, was because my family did go through like a really big loss. So we lost a family member that we did not expect to. And it was really rough because I could see how none of my family um, members could actually make sense of what was happening. And when you're in grief, especially sudden grief, it wasn't supposed to happen. When you're in sudden grief and you don't know how to deal with your emotion, everything went into flames. You don't know what to do with yourself. You don't know what to do with the other people's stuff, and it just got really messy. And at that point, I told myself, I want to break this cycle of dysfunctions. I don't want to be fighting, to be yelling. I don't want to be screaming in my family anymore. I just want to be the one to put a stop to that. So that was kind of like the shift. And then a few months, I think it's 8 months after that, I got a life activation initiation.
I think what you said, it's like it's a very common experience for many people when we're younger. We have this knowing, but we lack the context and clarity to actually develop it, right? So we have this internal feeling of like, I know there's more. I feel something. Maybe they're having different spiritual experiences, but they don't know how to put words to it, right? So it can be very confusing in a lot of ways, right? Until we actually align and find the people that can say, hey, no, this is actually a normal part of life, and there's actually ways to develop it, right? Because I talk to people all the time. They say, yeah, I had this experience when I was younger, this thing. And unfortunately, if we don't have, the right tools to actually build and develop those things, we end up shutting it off.
Right, in the right understanding, all encouragement, or if you're not encouraged that, hey, you want to develop this, you shut it off. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really a lack of. I mean, it's progressive now. Obviously, there's many more guides and teachers around the world, but it's just when we shut that off, then it limits us as well too, right? And it's like, as people can get almost intimidated by what it is, they don't know how to use it properly. So that's like why when you go to guides and teachers, they're giving you the tools to actually understand what's happening, to understand yourself, right? And how to actually get benefits from that, not it be this kind of weird mystical, like, you know
Yeah,
conf-
right.
confusion. But what about, you said, what were some challenges beyond just like the family situation, that like personal challenges that you finally said, hey, enough is enough, and I want to actually figure this stuff out?
Yeah, so along that line with what was happening with my family, like I have always had a lot of self-doubts and I didn't know this until I healed from it, and then I realized, oh my gosh, this was what was happening. But think of it as, picking up a cup, normal thing, drinking. I would have doubts about doing this. Like, I would be doing this every day, and then there will be three different threats in in my mind that will be attacking myself in different way. Like, oh my gosh, why are you drinking the water? Oh my gosh, what are you talking?
Just being like very
So
self-critical.
yes, and imagine living like that for, I think, 24, living with that for 24, 25 years. It's really, really rough. And you didn't even know, right? Like, it's because the voice, the inner critic, sometimes it's very, very subtle. So so I knew that I was, quote unquote, very messed up, and I wanted to be better. Like, I just didn't believe that I that life should be so much, so full of suffering in that way. Like, it didn't make any sense, because
Yeah.
I really, we all know, what we taught in the paradise self is, um, so life is a gift, and we're here to really experience this. And this is like the fact that we get to be here. It's a really big blessings. And
The
so
fact
it
that we
didn't
chose to be here.
we chose to be here too. Like, we were like, we
Yeah.
want to be here, right? And so it didn't make sense to me at all why I would be suffering, or why I would not have joy. So I think that was really the big inner drive that I didn't know at that point. Now I can kind of go back and explain it, but really that was it. Like, I just wanted to seek, like, to live
Yeah, I
in.
think people have that desire, right? It's before you take on a spiritual path, you have to build that desire to say, hey, I'm ready to actually empower myself, right? And I think almost everybody knows what they want, but they don't know the how. They don't have a system or clarity to actually take those steps. right? And then it becomes sort of what you're saying about the self criticism. It's, if they're not moving forward, they kind of accept it and like, oh well, I guess this is how life is, right?
Right. And when you accept life, when you accept that, then you don't there's no room for improvement. There's no way ahead because if you just have all those limiting beliefs, okay, well, I can't help it, like
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
and actually I do find that sometimes people actually don't know what they want either. And how would and it also makes sense, like how would you if you identify yourself, as, let's say in this case, this is my name, this is my status, this is what should be. If that is your whole identity, then what you think you want is going to come from, what we call the personality, but that's going to come from whatever those masks that you put on. Like, as, let's say, if you work on healing and just kind of removing all those perceived layers, then what you want is going to become a lot clearer. I just happen to have, like, whatever I share with you, that was like the deepest knowing that, thank God led me to the right path. But yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's another good point too. It's like when you start a spiritual path, you don't necessarily have to know. You don't have. It's not. People don't come in knowing their purpose, and they don't have extreme clarity. It's the process of gaining the clarity and the purpose, right? So it's piece by piece. It's pulling back the layers. It's pulling back the self-adopted stuff, kind of the stuff that was normal, that was causing the stress and disease. And then, right when they say, the only thing they have to be open to is saying, "Hey, I know there's a possibility of better." Right? It's hope, right? I think hope is the first step. And as you progress along that path, you open and expand more and more and more and become more of yourself and less of the personality, kind of all the stuff, the self-adopted stuff, the critic, all the junk that we just accumulate by just day-to-day life and interacting with the norm, right? It's like the norm is, if you want to be, the norm isn't necessarily the best, right? It's like anybody who, we were just talking about this right before we started, right? It's like anybody who is strong and peaceful at the same time, they're going against the norm, right? It takes a strong person to become the nice, peaceful person that can actually be in the world and, interact with all the day-to-day crap and be there to, show up and help people. That's not a passive thing. That just happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess if we talk along that line, like the norm, right, would be like you see people getting, let's say, driving and then they get cut off and they curse out the driver, So like I do see a lot of more and more happening where people are just less able to have that higher control of their emotions, and also it's easier to be negative towards other people. I guess. I mean, I don't like saying it that way, but we could say, if with this conversation, that if that's becoming the norm, then quote unquote going against the norm is, okay, let's be kind, but let's also be firm, and like let's act accordingly with the situation without adding more negativity um, to any problem, to anything
Well, it's the
that's
triggers, right?
right.
It's like as soon as you get triggered, the easiest thing to do is get upset, get angry, kind of lash out, right? Because that's the immediate, just like, oh no, what it takes strength to be patient, understanding, and compassionate to say, okay, how can I look at this different, and how can I turn this into a positive? How can I transmute the situation, right? To actually serve and not just continue along that norm of negativity and just beat everything down in life, right?
Yeah, it takes strength to, what do you call it, to break the cycle.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what you're saying with your family stuff, right? It's like you said, "Hey, I want to be the one," right? It's like being the one that breaks the cycle is not the easiest, but it's like it has to happen, right? And it takes a lot of strength. It's funny we're talking about strength, and it's like you can look at somebody and go, "Oh, they're not, or they're this or that, whatever." It's like strength is beyond just physical strength and size. It's like your resilience, right? And so it's we were saying the resilience is that's what the spiritual path gives you. It gives your spiritual muscles, right? So you can be we both know old ladies that are in the school, 70, 80-year-old ladies that are stronger than these big out in public. You see these big, strong guys in the gym or whatever. And it's like the difference is the resilience, right? They've trained themselves and they've built their spiritual muscles to be strong. That's why they look like, there's a sweet old lady. But then once you actually get to know them, you're like, oh crap. Right. Honestly, you're not the old lady.
No, no, I'm like, no, I'm just thinking of, and I was like, it's like, this is what I meant is like, what do you call it? I bow to you. That's what like, I'm just so blown away by, you know, by the strength that I've, like, by who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like, we see that. It's like it doesn't matter who the person is. Like everybody has to have that plan to be able to build that aspect of their life, right? It's because I think I just said this a few minutes ago. It's like, yeah, we can be physically strong and mentally strong, but what about the other stuff? When you had when you're doubting yourself and you're criticizing yourself too, it's like you can be as strong-willed as possible and like really try to force your mind, but always in the back there's that thing,
Yep.
and that thing's not as like it's like I always use the example. It's like suppressing, right? It's like, okay, I have these monsters. I'm just gonna put them in the closet. Like they're in the closet, they're not coming out, but I know they're still there. So there's
Yeah.
almost like a worry of like, okay, when are things gonna fall apart? When's it gonna come out and hurt me? Whatever it is, right? And it's like, so we have to build ourselves to be stronger than that thing. And that
Hmm.
thing, and then we kick the monster's ass, and then that issue just goes away, right?
Yeah. And like, being strong also means facing them, right? Like opening the closet and be like, all right, let's go. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
let's
but you
deal
can't.
it. Let's do this once and for all. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to be strong. You have to have tools, right? It's like going to war. We
Totally.
always talk about this in the school. It's like going to war with just like, I don't know, a toothpick, basically, right? Or just your bare hands. You're gonna fight somebody that's strong. They're gonna have tools and weapons as well too. So it's like the more we can learn and grow, it's like that's what we're stacking up, is just more tools in your arsenal, and
Yeah.
community as well too. It's like you don't want to be a one-man band trying to fight by yourself, right?
Yeah, I love that. Like, I'm definitely there's so many layers, right? Like, there's the layers of becoming quote unquote more spiritual muscles, but then as you get more muscles, you also get more tools, and you get more tools, you also get more, you could say, people, teammates. So there's like
Yeah.
you could layers of strength. I kind of see. I like that visual.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like we gotta battle the stuff too. It's like a lot of people, they try to do it by themselves, and it's every time I'm at a Empower Thyself, and at the end we're kind of giving some advice and some pointers. I say, hey, like don't do it by yourself, right? You just got to initiate. You have all these great tools, but doing that alone, it's still a limitation, right? And you look around the room, right? When we're in classrooms, there's 50, 100, sometimes hundreds, three, four, 500 people. They're together on the same mission. So it's like that's going to outweigh one person just doing it by themselves, right? We have, another cool thing about lineage is like we have multiple teachers around the world that have different pieces. And if we're struggling in an area, we can just pick up a phone and reach out and get some help, right?
Yeah.
It's not, nobody has to struggle alone, right? That's more of a choice.
Right, right. And tying it back to strength, strength could also be asking for help and knowing when to ask for help and be able to receive help, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you want to there's something you want to do yourself, but when it comes to quote unquote your weakness or your areas of that you need support, then maybe it is actually being strong to admit that you need help and open up to receive it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. There's two ways to do that, right? It's like, unfortunately, one of the hardest parts about being a guide is like seeing potential in somebody and them just not, because we teach empowerment, right? We can't do it for the person. We can just open the door and we can give them as much opportunity and potential tools and as possible, but you know, they have to step up and say, hey, I'm going to actually take action on this, right? It's like, that's one of the unfortunate things, is seeing somebody stuck, knowing their potential, but them being like, I'm just going to wait. I'm not ready yet. It's unfortunate. So, but yeah, it's like it all comes down to, I think the first steps. It's like, who do you see that has the results that you want, right? And trust them to take you to the next step, right? So maybe you're stuck in a relationship. We were talking about relationships, right? It's like maybe you're stuck in relationships, and okay, so find the person who has a relationship that you like. Doesn't have to be like exactly how you want it or perfect, but who has the best, like within your circle, who has the best relationship, or who has the most peace, the most joy, the most abundance, whatever those aspects are. I think that's what inspired us to come here, right? We said, oh wow, like we want to do that too. We want to learn how to create, right? And I think that's the same thing as we're here. we find those first few people that inspire us to take that next step. It's like, what do you have, or how did you achieve it? You know?
Yeah, I think you kind of got into an interesting topic of, eh, like who do you want to listen to, right? Like, well, I don't know if this is gonna be relevant, but kind of like it's so easy, especially with social media. Everybody's like, you have to do this if you want to do. That's that kind of like wanting, just asserting dominance, you could say. And so there's so much of that, but that makes you psychologically makes you want to listen to them right away. But then people would jump in and oh my gosh, taking all of their words without knowing, okay, without discerning, okay, is this actually the person that has the results that I want? Like is it the person that's walking the talk? Because if you're listening to somebody who does not have the result, or who he's either doesn't have the result or who's faking the results, then it doesn't really matter what they do. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot too. Social media, it's cool to say the thing that might click and be like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But look a little deeper and say, oh, does that person actually have those results, right? 'Cause a lot of people talking about, for example, relationships. Okay, are they in a good relationship? Yeah, they might be able to help you with like a small piece. Maybe they're a good communicator, like a small piece of that relationship. But if you really want a successful relationship and that's what you're going to them for, do they already have that thing, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
That.
that's like, it's really like are they in integrity with what they're saying? And with social media, it's so elusive. It's like most people really aren't. Or, I get a lot of people that say, hey, I follow this spiritual teacher, healer, whatever, and I'm in their online program. And they're like, I don't feel, and I've had multiple people say this, like, I don't feel like I'm actually moving forward. I feel like there's something else, right? Another thing, I've talked about this many times, like, if you have mentors and teachers, you have to be able to see those people in person. Or if they're not willing to actually see, sit down with you and connect in person, then I would highly recommend just run far, far away from those people, you know?
Mm.
Because you and I both know it's like you can't really have true effect on somebody's energy unless you're actually physically in their energy together, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that's how it is with the mystery school work, and I like to work with like any, let's say my financial advisor, like different roles that people play in my life. I do like to them to be in person, but I'm open to quote unquote mentors that could be online. I just haven't had any.
well,
I'm
there's
not
certain
talking about
things.
like the healings and stuff, because those have
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
done in
yeah.
person. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't done it, so I can't tell you.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not talking about the people who are strictly just online and they don't really want to show up for their people, right? If it's an inconvenience or whatever it is, it's more them just focusing on themselves rather than actually serving the person, right?
I guess, yeah. I'm not attracted to like a lot of those programs, so I can't really. Yeah, I haven't done. I mean,
That's good, I guess, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe.
I think I know what you're talking about, but I actually, yeah, I don't have enough data
Yeah, I mean,
to
imagine,
say anything.
there's some things are just pure information, right? If it's talking about balancing your accounting or something like that, it's like that's just for information. But if we actually want to transform and be the thing, what it is, it's beyond just the mind. It's like we actually have to apply it physically in person, so we have to have people in person that can actually move us forward.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's also way easy. I think it's easier when you have that mentors in your life physically, because you could actually see them, right? Because if you want to be inspired, you can't really be inspired somebody who, let's say in your case, if it's somebody who you just watch videos of them teaching. I find it would be hard for me to get inspired, because I want to see the person, living their day-to-day life, and I want to see how they deal with their relationship, what happens when, struggles, strike, things like that. And those are the things that, when I look at, let's say, my guide Aaron Wallace, any other teachers in the middle school, even tiny thing that you can look at the teachers, doing program, it is them living their life, and then you see the moments that they deal with whatever that comes, or that's when I will get inspired, like, oh wow, like I didn't know you could do that when this happens.
Yeah, it's a human
you
side
know,
of it,
and
right?
yeah, so it's definitely, you definitely want to be surrounded by people that you can get inspired by.
Yeah.
I guess maybe if you're talking about if you're only learning online, then I could see how that is hard, because that kind of come back to the piece you said about community, right? If you, it's I find that relationships that you create in person are a lot deeper than the ones online. In general, because I mean, you face to face and energetically, your auras overlapping, and so those can go a lot deeper, and it's actually harder too. I think a lot of reasons why people, are more comfortable with online conversations is because there is that barrier, with the screen, and so it makes it easier to hide and to just put on face. But
Yeah,
it's
it's a
when
very good
you're
point.
right, when you're one on one and together, not just in a romantic setting, but in any setting, that's really when you have to bare your soul, and that it takes more courage and it takes more openness. But the greater the risks, the greater the rewards. Um,
Yeah. Well, think about what's happening with relationships today and kind of social media and online. There's a lot of separation, and it's like life is all about relationships. We can't create anything unless we have relationships, and that's where a lot of people are struggling today. Of course, is relationships, right? Because they want to sort of have that barrier. They want to keep the masks on. They want to say, "Poor me,"
yeah,
right? So it's like that's another. I mean, that's where I've grown a lot is relationships as long as I've progressed along the path, and that's given me many of the fruits I have today. It's ultimately kind of that highest aspect of life is relationships and what we can create. You know, so it's funny that you mentioned that with like the online stuff is great. I think online is good for having the first few steps of like, oh, this is something new and let me learn more about it. But
yeah,
eventually
right,
it has to shift into, okay, what action can I actually take here? Who can I actually connect with in person, right? But
yeah.
yeah, what is your take? I guess that's a really good part. What's your take on relationships today, kind of where they're at and where people are struggling?
So you're talking about integrity. You're talking about what you're an expert on. I'm gonna try to, what do you call it? Make that topic a bit smaller. I can talk really well about romantic relationships. Because that's what I feel I have a better handle on. I'm still working on all of my other relationships. Like my family, for example, and those relationships constantly get better. But I want to talk more about romance. I mean, it's like what you were talking about, right? It's when people are more disconnected to themselves, it gets really hard for them to connect to other people. So that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people are struggling to find, let's say, a romantic connection, and not even just a connection, like you could say the one, like the right person, is because they're missing that connection to themselves. And what happens when you get into an intimate relationship is that the person becomes your clearest mirror, right? Your romantic partner is going to be the clearest mirror for you. They're going to mirror everything about you that you like and everything about you that you don't like. And what I found in that is what they're mirroring back is a lot stronger, because everybody else will mirror back to you too, but somehow when it
Just
comes to,
amplifies.
it's just amplifying. It's and so it makes it really hard, right? So, and that's why, if you haven't, or if you aren't really working on healing yourself, it can be really tough to be in a relationships and try to make it work or make it healthy, because imagine if you're with somebody that, or if you like, imagine if you just like constantly have a mirror in front of you, just kind of reflect you back over the thing you don't like. It's really tough, right? So you have two choices. Either you break up with a person, which I think happens a lot, right? That's why people feel disconnected. Like a lot, as a woman, I hear a lot of women complaining about men, women complaining about their partners. It's like, well, mirrors. So it's either you do that or you accept, hey, this is, they're showing me perhaps what I don't like. It's, even if I break up with this person and move on, well, guess what? The next person, the problem still persists. So let's just deal with it. Let's figure it out why I'm in this relationship and move on and
Feel
make
that
it
thing.
happen. right?
Yeah.
And I think this can be a really good, what do you call it, trigger to help somebody, really not trigger, but my brain today is like to help
Well,
somebody
yeah,
wanting
it's
to heal.
really yeah, it's really a gift because a lot of people, like you said, in relationships just say, "Oh, well, my partner's doing this or that, whatever," and it's really triggering them too. It's like, well, they're showing you that thing, and once you feel that thing, then you grow to the next level,
Yeah,
right?
right,
So it's
right.
like
So are you taking that choice or not? Are you taking the opportunity or not?
yeah, it's using it as an opportunity, right? Yeah, it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm mad at this person" or whatever. It's like, well, that's what I think it really starts with the misunderstanding of the purpose of a relationship, right? And the sacredness and the responsibility attached to that as well, too. It's very easy to get caught up in relationships just because they fulfill a need or fill a void or whatever it is. And that's why a lot of people break up, get divorced, is because they don't understand, the higher aspects of that, the spiritual aspects, the responsibility attached to that, right? And it's like anything else. It's like I always say it's a thing. It's like I talk about relationships and initiation. It's like getting promoted at a job. It's like when you get promoted, you have a higher level of responsibility, and you should be doing more things and creating more. It's the same thing with relationships. You have to like once you're in the relationship, that means you have to step up and
Mm,
do more, and that's what the responsibility gives you the power to be able to do more and express more, serve more, live a better life. So that's why relationships are probably right now. I think that's the most tricky thing for people now.
yeah, I see that. I totally see that. It's I see. That's one of the biggest struggles that, it's like eternal human struggles, right? Relationships. And you brought up a really good point. People, yeah, misunderstanding of relationships and their purpose. I love that. I love that because a lot of times we use a relationship to get something for ourselves,
Yeah,
right? That we really should be giving to ourselves. And if you're constantly expecting something for yourself out of the people around you, well, you're going to be in a constant state of discontent.
waiting. Yeah, that
Yeah.
waiting, being upset.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, right. And I just, well, that's really hell. I can't really, like, I'm just sort of trying to thinking about that, but I guess I remember that being the case. Um, yeah. So again, it's kind of like, then you got two choices: either you continue doing that, or okay, enough is enough. I'm gonna give myself what I need so that anybody that comes into my life will become a cherry on top.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we do need relationships to grow, but not to a certain level of attachments that are happening
Well, it's sort of a paradox,
right
right?
now.
Because the issue with relationships is people are selfish, but then they have to be selfish to work on themselves, to be selfless, so they can offer to somebody else, right? Because that's eventually, as we progress in life beyond the mundane. Level one is just taking care of ourselves, selfish, kind of putting the pieces together, and like where people get stuck is they're stuck in the selfishness, right?
Mm,
It's, oh, poor me, I'm stuck. I'm like, oh, it's like, woe is me, right? And it's like the next level is taking care of others. It's like giving of the self, right? And to receive that as well too. It's like if you want love, it's like how much love are you giving? If you want abundance, how much abundance are you sharing? You know? So yeah, everything's a paradox. I always tell people like, hey, if you want success in life, do things opposite of most people. But
right, right. And when you talk about that, like, it's also misdirection of focus, right? Like, let's say we're really simplifying things here, but okay, there's thing that you have to do for yourself, that you have to give to yourself, and the thing that you want to give to others. What usually happen is the thing that you should give to yourself, people give to others, and the thing that you want to give to others, they want it for themselves, right? And so everything is usually a flip, and that's
yeah,
just constant. That makes life really hard.
eventually, I mean, that can cause a lot of confusion, right? Because I think what we just said, they're like, well, some people are probably scratching their head of like, so I have to do if I want to get something, I have to give something first. Like, that's probably going to sound backwards to somebody. But then it's like I would say like, hey, start doing it, right? If you want more love, go ahead and give love, right? It's like if you want more friends, go be a friend first,
Yeah,
and see what you have to. It's like you're at the center of what you're creating. You have to initiate that thing first. And if you feel like you can't initiate that thing first, or you feel like you don't have that thing to give, then you have to go find the people that can help you cultivate that thing, right?
I
And so
love that.
that's another good thing of like what is healing? Healing is cultivating those things so we have it, and then when we have it, we can share it, and then that just gets magnet, and we receive more and more and more, right? It's like what's the number one thing we're sharing? Really, the number one thing we're sharing when we're doing healings is love. We're bringing love into those kind of gaps, and that energy is clearing out the negative energy, that what's stuck or what's penetrating through all those things. It's like when somebody, it's like you've probably seen this a million times, like when somebody does a healing session, how do they feel? They feel more love, more joy, more clarity, more inspiration, and they use that energy and they go share it and they say, oh wow, this thing came back to me now. I have people all the time, they're like, oh, I did a session, I'll check in next day, a week, few weeks after, and just see how they're integrating, and all these things that they wanted start coming in all of a sudden, right? It's like, yeah, because it's you now, you have that thing now, you're drawing it in.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So
And like there can be so many things that can be said about relationships, and this is where I really come to appreciate the tools of the path, life activation, empower thyself, like the basic tools that we offer to people. And yeah, we, a lot of them, they generally can work for everybody, but they work for everybody in different ways, right? So let's say we do empower thyself. The first, somebody is gonna find, oh my gosh, I find my life partner. For somebody, it's like, oh my gosh, I could heal my family relationship. Some people, like myself, initially was just like, I heal my relationship with myself, right? So, and I think a lot of times when it comes to relationships, romance in this case, we get really, what do you call it, impatient because we just want to find that person already.
yeah,
But heal,
yeah, like right now everybody wants things now today.
right, right. But healing, there's like an onion. We usually describe it that way. So there's so many layers. Maybe to get to your partner, to your, you could say the one, it takes healing other parts of your relationship first, right? And it's not, and that gets really tough. And because how do you know, like, I don't, there's no one person, there's no one like dating guru who's gonna be able to tell you, hey, you have to heal this and heal this. And that's kind of where the path is so powerful. Let's say with the empower thyself initiation, it's because it brings you back to your core, the core divine nature of who you really are. And once you start connecting to that true core, then the things in your life are going to start to shift to be able to realign with that new understanding. And that's going to mean, certain relationships getting cleaned up, getting healed, and things like that. But those are going to happen internally
Yeah.
instead of like instead of you as a, let's say, as the guide saying, hey, you have to look at this. No, it's gonna be an internal process. And like a lot of times I kind of get fascinated about like how do like it will be hard to like I myself, I'm sure there are a lot of, let's say, very successful dating coaches and I've never used them, but I just can't imagine knowing what I know about people's struggles with relationships and being a coach. Like how can I help people find the right person if they have all this things that they need healing, and that's not my and am I making sense?
Yeah, but healing, I see people get stuck with dating coaches is because they want that relationship so bad. It's like we crave love, right? And we should have
Mm,
love, but they get stuck in yeah, they get really stuck in the mind, right? It's like love is a feeling, right? So we can read all these books, we can do all these things, but if we're not actually building, I hate to say muscle, but like we have to build up to that place, right? We get piece by piece by piece until we build our container of love if we want to maximize that, right? So there is no like one trick that's just gonna land you,
yeah.
it's land you your the love of your life or whatever. Twin flame, this is actually kind of a side part to this, but people are like, oh, there's a twin flame, there's this, that, whatever. It's like,
I used to be into that.
yeah, right. It's like, and that gets really that keeps somebody stuck because they're like waiting around for that just like crazy connection, like, oh, that one person. It's like just like anything, it's like you're going to grow whatever you put consistent effort into, right? So if you don't have, some people start on their spiritual path, they already have that person. We sort of come in with different, you know gifts and different limitations, and it's like But ultimately, in empower thyself, it's like, what do we gain? We gain power and personal strength. And it's like what we do with that strength is going to sort of look different from everybody else, right? It's like my path is different from yours, but it gives us that structure, gives us the structure to, ultimately self-actualize, connect to the divine, build our energy. And what you do with that is going to be different from me and everybody else, right? But
Yeah, but it's gonna be the best next step for the person, right? It's individualized.
yeah, but back to like the dating coach stuff, it's like, yeah, there is no, the magic pill is you. I just did a story about this just a couple hours ago. It's like the magic pill is you, right? So
Mhm.
it's like what is that thing that's going to build you, right? There is no but it's like the pieces, the energetic pieces, the healing that needs to be done. I've seen dating coaches and stuff, like they talk about it, but it doesn't actually shift those inner core pieces, right? Because they have, talking about it doesn't shift it. That's why we need healer. That's why, life is set up that we actually
Mhm.
need each other. We need somebody to, bring in a higher energy, bring in more love to shift those pieces externally so we can actually receive the love,
Mhm.
we can build ourselves up. And then we get the authentic version of what we want. And it's not just like, hey, I see this with, I don't know as much with like women's dating, but I see this in dating for guys is they try to figure out these psychology tricks of like basically
Yes.
how to trick somebody into falling in love and how to trick them into staying with you. And like internally, they don't actually believe and they actually don't feel worthy of that thing. So eventually it always falls apart and they're back to square one. Right? It's not until they actually build themselves internally and the worthiness and it's there, then that relationship can actually stick and grow. You know?
Yeah, that's so cool. That's like such a. It's so refreshing to hear from a man talking about dating.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I've
I
s-
love that.
I've seen that for women too. It's like tricks.
Yeah, games, mind games.
Yeah, it's like games and like nobody that people can feel that too. It's like another thing with energy is like people can feel if you're bullshitting them or not. Like they can like it goes beyond the mind, it goes beyond words. Like just by standing next to somebody, you can feel that person and be like, okay, is this person, in integrity or are they bullshitting me or not? Right.
Mm,
So it's like, yeah, the tricks can kind of start you out, but then you can then you're sort of shown as a fraud. Like, really, who is this person? Or back to the resilience. It's like when stuff actually happens in the relationship, you don't have that resilience. Boom, it falls apart. Just like, in
yeah,
seconds. You know,
yeah, yeah, and that's a good point of like you're playing mind games generally a sign that you're lacking in self-worth or like lacking confidence. I really like that. That makes sense. And because you already lack that, so when you, let's say, you can play these mind games and get the person to psychologically be interested in you, not necessarily because their heart is in it,
yeah,
but let's say if you get into a relationship with a person using mind games, well, now when all the pretense has to drop, your issues like that, lack of self-worthiness, lack of confidence, that's gonna you know
get
be right
exposed.
there,
Yeah,
be again with that person being holding the strongest mirror for you, right? Well, now that gets really tough. So then I love that. Yeah. So again, like everything we talks about, it's really is about you, right? It's about like reconnecting to that divine essence or to your spirit, because from there everything else flows.
yeah. I think that's another thing too with what's happening today. I mean, that was definitely a challenge for me, right? It's like connecting more with my heart, right?
Mm,
Because information, social media, that's a big thing. It's like that's a big purpose of our mission in the school is to connect back to our hearts and ourselves, right? It's like that's where people get caught up so much on social media and these hacks and these tricks and the psychological manipulation and stuff. It's like that's all in the mind. I always say our mind is a junk box, right? It's like it has all our limitations, our crap, and our fear. So it's like when stuff comes in, it gets sorted through. It's like, oh no, like I don't know. But it's like when we are able to bypass our mind, just go clear into our heart, then that's actual knowing, right? And that's where that's a really cool part of actually, for at least for my journey on the path, is like being able to actually connect to my heart, connect to myself, and have that authentic experience. You know, and
Hmm.
that's definitely where, I guess, if we're focused on relationships right now, it's definitely where people get stuck. Is like they're so disconnected. They're like, "What do you mean?" Like I get people all the time, like, "What do you mean, like my heart?" Like I hear what you're saying, but I don't get it. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like you don't actually get something until you feel it. I was just teaching somebody a few weeks ago how to snowboard, and I was telling them what to do, and I wasn't like overloading them because I didn't want the kind of confuse them. But it wasn't until they said, you're saying these things, and I kind of got it, but it wasn't until I felt it to where I knew,
Yeah.
right? And that's
Well, they have to do it, right? You have to experience it when it clicks.
yeah, yeah, it's right. So it's like all the self improvement, kind of back to what you were saying. It's like you're really into self improvement and structure and organization. And that's just all amazing, but you don't really have the thing or the knowingness until you actually feel it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was really into it, years ago before the middle school. But what happened was I'm like, well, I can do all these tips and tricks, but nothing really stuck.
Yeah.
Nothing really shifted my life the way I wanted it to, you know? And that's when I found spirituality, and that was a missing piece. So now, like, a lot of these productivity tips and hacks, like, those are great tools to have that can help you better organize your day so that you can do what you want to do. But again, back to the core, like what is the core of of my foundation? What is the core of how I live my life? Well, that comes back to my spirituality. And I think whether in dating or any other like area of life, spirituality plays such a big part. Even let's say for what you were sharing, well, even just learning to connect to your heart, what does that mean? And how do you do it like that? It takes a spiritual practice to do it consistently. Yeah. And I think I mentioned, I'm bringing this up because a lot of times we, at least in the past, like we want to just put spirituality away and just focus on the matter at hand, which is I just want to date or I just want to be productive or whatever.
Well, because it's just most people look at spirituality as this like mystical thing that
Yeah.
like, oh, this is just whatever. And it's like that's not the reality of it. It's like it creates everything here too, right? So it's like I understand. I mean, when I started the spiritual path, I'm like, okay, we're talking about nothing but everything at the same time, right? And it's like so at first it's hard to make it tangible, but thank God we have hermetics because hermetics can make this stuff very practical and tangible, right? It's like it's really pinpointing, giving context to, okay, that thing that was kind of floating here, oh, that's what that actually is. And then when you actually know it, you can actually apply it, right? Because we have hermetic communication, hermetic relationships, all that stuff, right? But yeah, it's like ultimately the spiritual path draws you forward to progress, right? Without that, you have no leadway to keep going, because most people have no idea why they're here or where they're going. So if you don't know those two things, how can you actually take the steps? You're kind of just experimenting and trying this, trying that. And it's like, well, why? Like, why are we actually, we answer that entirely self. But if we don't know where we're going, it's really tough to, it's like if you don't know what type of house you want to build, what are you going to do? Just start hammering like wood and nails and like it might come out to something. You could put
Wish
a
will
roof,
happen, yeah.
it could be like a roof or whatever, but it's not going to be as amazing as it possibly can, right? So it's like it takes more than just sort of throwing things at the wall or like, you know. Actually, that actually brings up a good point because I see it commonly before people really start on a true spiritual path. They are trying things. They're trying maybe yoga. They're trying different self improvement, meditation, breath work, whatever. They're reading books, right? But it's hard to. I used this story recently. It's like going in a dark room and like you're finding pieces, but you don't know where the actual the other piece is. You don't know how to put it together. So you're always in this kind of dark state or this confusing state, right? And it's like a spiritual path actually says like, hey, these put all the pieces together. We shine light on it. It's like we start moving forward, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I think, it's sometimes more tempting to just try out all the different things instead of, you could say, it's not, you're sticking to a path because it's easy to thing. It's kind of like, how do I say this? The thing is, for a spiritual path to be truly effective, it has to be greater than your whims. It has to be greater than you,
Your
because
own crap.
exactly, right? Because let's say if I wake up, and let's say if I said I was gonna do something, and then I wake up and I don't feel like doing it, well, there's nothing that's holding
Stop.
me
Yeah,
accountable to doing the thing. But because, let's say, in this way, the path is greater than your, what do you say, your crap.
your personal
Well,
crap, your limitations. Yeah,
right. So then now I have certain things being held, like certain things that I need to get done that are being held accountable in front of me. Now I know, okay, I know I need to do that. I need to do that. I need to do that. Right. It doesn't matter if I don't like it. Like, it's still there. It's something I gotta do. So yeah, being on a spiritual path can be harder, but it's going to show you what you need to look at, what you need to deal with. And that's just going to make it more likely that you will get it done. Versus when you're just trying things and not really committing to anything. Similarly, if you're not committing to a relationship, then when you don't have that like higher commitment to something, then you're just not going to go anywhere. Like what you're saying, you're going to keep learning and getting new knowledge, but nothing really
sticks.
improving your life and your actual state of being.
Yeah, that's why it's really when people are stuck. It's like, well, where's your responsibility and who are you taking care of? Right? It's like
Mm.
you move forward a lot by getting over your own crap. It's like when you're more concerned about other people than yourself. Sort of another paradox. It's like then you start moving forward and you have more joy, then you have more fulfillment because, fulfillment comes through joy and sharing the joy,
Yep. I
right?
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that talks like that reminds me of purpose, right? You wanna have a higher purpose in life. And you want your purpose to be something that is greater than you, greater than your family, greater than your community, greater than your country, like just the highest, right? Because the higher your purpose, the more you're gonna have, the more motivation, the greater your drive to get it done. And it's easier when, let's say, you're struggling with yourself or with your relationships, when you have something that is way up there that that you need to get done. It's just easier to refocus that, okay, I need to be there, I need to get that done, so I'm gonna overcome whatever struggles that I'm seeing right now.
Well, even relationships too. It's like if there's not an understanding of what the purpose of a relationship is, or there's not, an individual higher purpose for the relationship, it's then all the small stuff becomes such a big problem. It's like, why can't you do
Totally.
this? Oh, this little tiny thing. And all these little tiny triggers, like all this base level stuff. And you see these couples like arguing constantly over like the most tiny little things. It's like, if you know where you're going, then I always say, same thing, like personally, if you have little issues in your own life or vices, whatever, if you weigh it against your mission and your purpose, okay, where does this land? How important is this? And if it's below, it's like no problem. You should just be able to just clear it like that. Right? It's like, hey, we have a higher responsibility. So why would we want to drop back to this level and get stuck here? It's like we want to keep growing. Yeah, I think it's really important. It's like you said before, it's like when you start on a path, you don't need to know that thing right away. It's like just do one thing at a time because every step is going to give you new fruits, right? You're going to feel more expanded, more joy, the more you go. Take a drink. Yeah, you're good. Take a break.
Thanks for waiting. I had a
We're
sniffle.
back. No worries. But yeah, we covered a lot about relationships, I guess. Well, not, I mean, there's so much about relationships, but I said we covered a lot about. I mean, there's way way more about relationships
Yeah.
we can go into. Yeah, I would say if you really want to. I mean, what's helped obviously is the Hermetic classes that Sovereign teaches, and those bring so much clarity and understanding. I always say men try to get women to think like men, and women try to get men to think like women. It's like it just doesn't work that way. So we need to first understand ourselves and understand ourselves, understanding others, and then how those two pieces come together, right? So what would you say? We talked about a lot of stuff, but what kind of message would you want to leave to anybody who's listening, or you know, a small piece that they can take and run and really help them get to the next stage?
Well, so since we've been talking about relationships, The best relationships or the most important relationship that you want to work on is the relationship with yourself. Right? Reconnect back to your spirit, and you'll find that from there, from that connection, everything else will flow. And yeah, that's what I found to be just the most effective way. When I have a problem with somebody, I go back and look at myself,
Yeah.
and things get resolved right away. So if you're impatient and you want your relationships to be better now, like today, well, look at yourself.
Yeah. So I think another way, like, everything in life is relationships. Anything we create takes a relationship, whether it's a person or it's a thing, whatever it is, right? So to have better relationships, we need a better relationship with ourselves. And to have a better relationship with ourselves, we have to know ourselves, right? How do we know ourselves? Is like we have to have a clear plan and path to achieve that, which, there might be this thing called Empower Thyself and the mystery school that can deliver that. So, yeah, I would really think anybody who wants more out of life and wants more fulfillment, deep relationships, and more joy, it's like, reach out to a guide, reach out to Lynn, reach out to me. There's multiple guides around the world, but the sooner somebody reaches out, the better. The sooner they get past their own, maybe it's fear, worry, whatever it is, and say, hey, I need somebody to help me, and they're open to that. Then they have everything we just talked about for the last hour. That's all put in motion now, and life becomes it accelerate. I've never seen anything accelerate growth faster than this.
Yeah.
Even if you are impatient, sure, be impatient, but find something that's actually going to work, and you're not, stop wasting your time with, just trying and kind of like, what's that?
Distractions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, distractions, right? It's like going back to what we said, it's like find the person who has what you have and ask them for help and be willing to say, be willing to listen, right? Be willing to say, hey, they might know something. That's interesting. That's cool, and commit to it. Just like you would have to with any your relationship with your spiritual path. It's the same thing.
Yep.
And just,
Commitment's a key.
yeah, nobody wants to commit anymore. But yeah, well, I appreciate having you on. And, if you want to drop any social media, or what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
The best ways would be either via phone, so call, text me, and my number is 55950, and or you can also message me on social media, especially mostly Instagram. That's where I'm on the most, and it's at linhle.co.
So when this gets millions of views, everyone's going to have your phone number and your phone's going to be ringing off the hook.
Perfect. Yeah,
Perfect.
perfect. That's what
Yeah,
I made it for.
you can teach all these people. Awesome. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone.